This is just me gonna be me ragging on We Contain Multitudes because it's awful.
Hi, says the girl with the right eyes that pairs pretty well when she hits you with the soft smile.
Hi friends, it's Rory. Today is gonna be a super duper fun video. So I was kind of like thinking about things that I wanted to film videos about, and I was on Twitter, you know, as you do, because we're all obsessed with that fucking bird app, and I randomly came across one of those memes, you know, the memes, where it's like the difference between reading books and reading fan fiction, and I laughed, and then I was like, huh, that might be fun. So this is just a video where I'm gonna talk about like the differences in what I look, or my fan fiction habits versus my book habits. And it's just gonna be really quick and really fun. Okay, so the first thing about fan fiction is that I absolutely refuse to read any fan fiction that is in first person. Oh, first person. Okay. Ooh, this fic looks good. What is that? No, absolutely not. I don't know what it is because like when it comes to reading books in first person, I don't really have an issue with it. I mean, I definitely prefer books that are in third person. I just think third person is more like, what's a good word for it? Like, I feel like when it's in third person, despite you're disconnected from it, but at the same time you see more. Like when it's first person only, you're only seeing what that one character is talking about, and I want to see more of like overall in general. But I've read plenty of books in first person. In fact, some of my favorite books are in first person. But the second I open up a fan fiction, if I see I said, or I thought, or I anything, or me, I am immediately exiting out of that fan fiction. It just that's not the move, chief. Up next, length in books. God, this looks long. How long is it? Almost 600 pages? No, absolutely not. Not today. Not in this economy. No. Enemies to lovers? Slow burn? Fake relationship. That's good. 200,000 words. What time is it? Fuck it, I'll be tired tomorrow. Now, I've read long books, but I definitely prefer much shorter books unless I am actively invested in something. So like, for example, Percy Jackson books started out really short with the Percy Jackson series, and then started to get longer with the Heroes of Olympus series, and now they're all, you know, fairly girthy books. Like, they're not the longest books that I've ever read, but they're definitely like up there. I definitely prefer to read shorter books. It's just around the 350 page mark, like that's when I start to go and I'll keep checking how much longer that I have to go, and it's, you know, a struggle. Unless I'm really invested in the story, in which case I will fly through it. It does not matter how long it is. Hi, Kiyoshi novels. When it comes to books, I prefer something around 250, 350. I will read longer books naturally, because you can see on my shelves I have longer books, but it's a struggle sometimes. But when it comes to fan fiction, my guy, the longer the better. Naturally, most of the fan fiction I read is fairly short. It's kind of like, you know, around 20,000 to 50,000 words. There are some, let me tell you, that are quite long. Here's an example. There is a Hobbit fan fiction. Hi, I'm a big fan of Hobbit fan fiction. It's probably the fandom that I read the most fan fiction about other than Merlin. I don't know why. It calls to me. But there's a Hobbit fan fiction called The Change Future. The first one is called To Change the Course of the Future. And it is a retelling of Lord of the Rings if right after the events of The Hobbit, Bilbo realized that the ring that he found was Sauron's ring and was just like, okay, well, we're gonna go and we're gonna get rid of this because you're gonna find out some things about my ships, because Thorin, the love of my life, was completely overtaken by gold, and gold is not good for anyone. We're gonna get rid of this. And it is one of the most beautiful written fan fictions I've ever read. Like, fucking Gimli, she knows that character to a fucking T, because despite the fact that that character is 50 years younger in this story than they would be in regular Lord of the Rings, same character. Anyways, this is not me like gushing over fan fiction. This is explaining why the difference in how I read fan fiction and regular books is. That fan fiction alone is like 180,000 words. I did the math. I did a little bit of research to see like kind of like how many words are in a page number, and then did math. And if we're just taking that first fan fiction, that fan fiction alone is approximately 700 pages. And that's just the first fan fiction. There's an entire series in that universe, and I've read every single one of them multiple times, and it's approximately 600,000 words. So that's over almost like 1,300 pages. And I'll just read it. And the worst part about it is that I'll be looking for a late night fanfic. You know when you're like, I want to fall asleep, so I'm gonna read a fan fiction, and then you find this beautiful, immaculate fan fiction, and you just gotta read it, and then you don't go to sleep. You just stay awake. That's me when it comes to fan fiction. I love them. And I think that the reason that I prefer like reading longer fan fiction as opposed to reading longer books is that most of the time the fan fiction, I already know the characters, and so I'm really invested in them. A lot of times when it comes to like longer books, specifically like first books or second books in a series, if they're really long, it's a lot of world building, and I'm not I don't want to learn about a world for 700 pages. I want to already know the world and just get to know the characters. This is because I'm a character driven bitch. So next we're gonna talk about fantasy in fan fiction as opposed to books. There's absolutely no reason for me to buy this book. I already know that I'm not gonna like it because it's fantasy, and it's a high fantasy, and I know I'm not gonna like it because I hate fantasy books. You just need to understand that I'm not going to like it. You know what? I think it's time for me to reread this Hobbit fanfiction that I'm absolutely in love with, because the fantasy elements of it are immaculate. Love it, adore it, let's go. If you've been on my channel for a while, you know that I am not that much of a fan of fantasy. In fact, it's probably a genre that I dislike the most. I'm a boring bitch who just likes to read her magical realism and her contemporaries, and I've accepted it about myself. I will try to read fantasy, and it's just like, I'm definitely much better with lighter fantasy, which is why the magical realism that has like the fantasy elements is much better for me. But when it comes to like high fantasy, like building a world and I have to understand it, it's a struggle. But I would read fantasy versions of fucking fan fiction all day, every day. Like, once again, The Hobbit is one of my favorite fandoms to read about. Fucking Merlin is one of my favorite fanfiction fandoms to read about. Of course, I read Legend of Coeur, which I will also read like fantasy versions of things that aren't fantasy. So like, for example, I really like to read fan fiction that is the like fantasy AU of My Hero Academia. I think it's quite good. I can't read fantasy books. I'm really trying to find fantasy that like speaks to me, but I've just kind of like given up on it. But fantasy all day and fan fiction, let me tell you, every single day, all day, fairy tale retellings, fantasy retellings, every single fandom, love it. Bad writing. What type? This is some of the worst writing that I've ever fucking read. I hate the fact that I spent money on this. The writing's not that great, but like, it's the only fic for my rare pair, so might as well. So I'm much more lenient in fanfiction when it comes to bad writing, because a lot of times fanfiction writers are not professionals, and I understand that. A lot of times they're just fucking kids, and that's great, and I love them for being able to like expand on the world that I love and they love, but I'm not expecting them to be fucking like Elizabeth Acavito. I'm not expecting that. But when it comes to books, you, especially self-publish is, I'm a little bit less harsh on, but if you are getting a book published through a publishing company, you're sold in fucking Barnes and Nobles, and your writing is shit, what the fuck, my guy? We Contain Multitudes, once again. This is just gonna be me ragging on We Contain Multitudes because it's awful. You should know what you're doing if you're publishing a book. And I'm not saying that all fanfiction is bad. Like, there are some fanfictions that I love more than their source material. Like, most of the Harry Potter fanfiction is just immaculate. But I'll definitely be more lenient when it comes to fan fiction than I will with regular books, and that's just a normal thing. Most of this has been me talking about how much I love fan fiction. This is one where books are in and of itself better than fan fiction, and that is that at least a book will have an ending. Oh, you have got to be kidding me. At least a book will end. Now, it's one thing if you read like incomplete fan fiction, that always has the chance of not being finished. I am not that type of person. I am a, how do you say, lazy bitch. I need my fan fiction to be finished. I don't have the patience for waiting for chapters to come out. So most of the time when I read fan fiction, I put that complete only sign on and it's good to go. And most of the time, you know, it's completed, so there is. But sometimes a fan fiction will be marked complete and it'll just not be complete. It'll be marked complete because the author's like, I'm marking this complete because I'm never reading it again. It's a gamble when you read fan fiction, even if you're only looking for complete fan fiction, that it may not be finished. And it's the struggle that I live through every single day. I actually ranted about this to my roommate a couple months ago because I was reading a Hobbit fanfiction. Gotten 27-ish chapters into this Hobbit fanfiction, and it was juicy and it was beautiful and I loved it and the writing was everything to me. And then I get to the last chapter and I'm like, there is way too much that needs to be complete for this to be the last chapter. I may have just marked it complete. And we're like, yeah, I'm not writing this anymore. And the struggle. Because at least I know I'm getting an ending when it comes to a book. This book, which I'm currently reading right now, I know it's gonna end. This book that I want to read, I know it's going to have an end. This book that I read and I absolutely fucking hated, and I hated the way it ended, and I wish I had ended in a completely different way, or in fact I wish I had never read it in the first place. At least it had an ending. I wasn't satisfied with the ending, but at least I know that it had one. Reading a fan fiction is like putting your hand into a prize bag, and sometimes, a lot of times, it's going to have a prize in it, but sometimes it'll have a poisonous snake. And that's just the risk that you're gonna take. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is the fucking tagging system for AO3 specifically. I only read fanfiction on AO3 unless I want to go back to one that I liked in fucking like middle school. Then I'll go back onto fanfiction.net, which is where I used to read it. But AO3 has spoiled the hell out of me. Okay, I heard someone on Twitter say that this was sapphic and that it was slightly enemies to lovers. So let's just fucking hope. Feel like reading a coffee shop AU because I want to be like nice to myself. Let's do Merlin and Arthur from Merlin. Yeah, let's do that. Oh look, there's about 1 million of them. Let's go. Because I can just get a fan fiction that is tailored to what I want to read at the time. Like, I'm in the mood to read a best friends to lovers coffee shop AU. Just put in the fucking tags that I want and I've got a list of them. I'm in the mood to read a 300,000 word enemies to lovers, slow burn, fake dating, mafia. Just put the tags in and it'll be there for me. AO3 spoiled so much, and that's not really the way that books work. I did see someone was like making a website to like try to make it so that you can put tag books in, and technically there is the like tagging system where you can put stuff on shelves in Goodreads, but those don't really work and you're really going off of other people. If someone misshelves something on Goodreads, I could go into a book expecting one thing and it not meet that expectation because it was never that thing. I was just going off the tag off of Goodreads. Just, we need a system for books that are like AO3 so that I can be a lazy bitch and just be like, I'm in the mood for enemies to lovers sapphic book, and I just put in enemies to lovers sapphic book and it'll deliver a list of recommendations on a silver platter and I can be like, dope, pick one and go. I'm just saying. That's what we need. And that is just kind of like a discussion slash just fun video of me going through and talking about some things like my fan fiction habits versus my like reading habits and the differences between them two. Naturally, I love reading books. I adore regular books. I also adore fan fiction. There was a long time in college where I read 0 books and I was only fan fiction. There was a while when I was reading only books and no fan fiction. I tend to have like a healthy middle when it comes to the two, where if I'm in a reading slump book-wise, I'll typically be reading fan fiction. And I don't understand why people say that reading fan fiction isn't real reading, because like, I'm putting in the work. I just don't count that stuff towards my Goodreads goal. You know what would be fun, guys? If you have a fan fiction recommendation, leave it down below. I'll check it out. Like, and if I'm part of the fandom for it, I'll probably read it. I adore fan fiction. If you would like to slip me some She-Ra, Legend of Coeur, Merlin fan fiction, that would be uber dope. As always, I hope that you guys had a great time with me today. There's a link down below in the description box where you can find a list of resources when it comes to the different movements that are going on. You can also find information about registering to vote. Make sure that you register. And you know what? Fuck it. I'll also include the fan fiction that I mentioned in this video because, like, yes, let's go. I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.
They don't wanna talk, they don't wanna feel the voice in my head saying I don't think I'm. They don't wanna talk, they don't wanna feel the voice in my head saying I don't think I'm real, 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 I don't think I'm. I don't know where my head's been at.